Hello everyone, I am JR with Phoenix Soul, and today I have the distinct honor of interviewing Dell Howlett, a renowned award-winning director-choreographer making his Arizona Theater Company debut with Ain't Misbehavin.
The pinnacle of jazz in America in the musical theater really is a study of Fats Waller and Ain't Misbehavin. Right? Now, you think generally that you are exposing people to Fats, but what I found so touching was that so many people go, oh, my favorite song is Honeysuckle Rose. My favorite song is, or my dad's favorite song was, people were getting up and dancing in the aisles and crying, out of nowhere. I'm like, it's not my show doing that. They have some connection to this. When you see the whole stage put together, what you'll see is I was really interested in Fats Waller's work in its most embodied. What would it be like if we instead of setting it in a cabaret, if we actually set it in a sensual circus of Fats Waller's mind? We open here February 21st, our first show, and then we close here on March 8th. So come down to the Tempe Center for the Arts,
The TCA.
the TCA, and check out Ain't Misbehavin. You will have a fantastic time. I am an artist who jumps back and forth between directing, being kind of the central artist, interpreting the work, and also choreographing with some collaborators that I choreograph for, other directors who've been longtime collaborators.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And for Ain't Misbehavin, coming to the Valley the first time. For those who don't know, Ain't Misbehavin is a heavily storied and revered production celebrating not only Fats Waller, but also it's a love letter to jazz. It's a love letter to the Harlem Renaissance. It has won numerous awards, numerous accolades. It's won Best Musical in 1978. It's won Best Performance by a Featured Actress for Nell Carter. It's also won Best Direction by Richard, oh my goodness. Do you know the...
Maltby Jr.
There you go.
The legendary Richard Maltby Jr.
The man, the myth, the legend himself. And I wanted to ask you personally, what does it mean for you in having this opportunity of directing and choreographing and just telling this story?
Yeah. Well, I've been choreographing a very long time. I've been choreographing since I was about 11. And so the directing is something that also kind of came along with that. As a choreographer, you're always trying to get to, especially a choreographer for the theater, you're always trying to get to a certain amount of dramatic truth. And so it was a really natural kind of move for me as a choreographer to move into directing. But most of my work as director and choreographer has been within the musical theater. And in that, most of my work in the musical theater has been in musical theater that deals with the history of jazz and jazz in America, right? That many people will call American classical music, right? And so my work in the theater, from Jelly's Last Jam, which is about Jelly Roll Morton, to a biographic musical that I just recently did about Billy Strayhorn, to a piece that I'm working on with Thelonious Monk's family, the jazz within the theater, and how that is celebrated, and how that also is cracked open in order for us to understand something really specific about Black life, has always been a really important part of my artistic profile. Right. Many people think, and I would agree in many ways, that Ain't Misbehavin is the greatest review ever composed. And I believe it's the greatest review ever composed, not only because of Richard Maltby and Murray Hurwitz, who put the musical together, but because it really does focus in on jazz great, a stride pianist, Harlem Renaissance superhero, Fats Waller, who is an American hero, right? Someone who comes out of the Harlem Renaissance, those interwar years, 20s, 30s, and 40s in Harlem, a studied piano player and composer, who was able to, at the time, really put together musical ideas, performance ideas, and a kind of ownership of self that the entertainment industry had not seen. So he was a first of his kind. And so approaching Ain't Misbehavin' now at this time to celebrate, in February, Black History Month, is such an important thing. And so, yeah, that's why I kind of love Ain't Misbehavin', and I think it's a really extraordinary piece to be exploring at this time.
How did you approach directing this?
Yeah.
Especially, it's a show that doesn't necessarily follow a traditional narrative structure.
Yeah. Yeah. My real hook into the show, um, first off, is always Fats. And so understanding the world that Fats came from, right? That specific and particular Harlem. And to know that he grew up in a certain American era, right? That was both certain um, Renaissance ideas, especially with Black artists getting a bit more visibility, but also during Jim Crow America, and also during a very specific and particular time in America's history.
Mm.
And so all of that, with him being a composer and an artist who makes things with his experience, all of that is also in the music. And so even without having a narrative, the music is a kind of there's a kind of a compass
Mhm.
within it, right? That if you actually kind of pull some things away and really get down to the truth of it, at times some of the music is really about celebration and fun and joy,
Mhm.
but what always undergirds that is a celebration of the actual Black life
Right.
that he was writing about. When I think about a song, like a song in second act, Black and Blue, right, which is a really beautiful choral piece, but it also is a piece where Fats Waller was really looking at and trying to bring language and trying to bring musical idea to talking about what it actually means to be in the squeeze of racial life here in America, right? And so you would think that an artist whose oeuvre, whose kind of body of work is usually celebrated as party, as joyful, as wouldn't be able to kind of touch that level of reality, of kind of tension in his piece, his work as well. But that's in there too. And so if you go into the music knowing that it has all of that definition in it, all of that breadth in it,
Mhm.
it allows you to kind of find that dynamic in it. And so that's what I think you'll see on stage is a really dynamic show, right? Where one moment we can be clapping and dancing in the seat, but in the next moment we can really be thinking about the human lives that
Mhm.
actually inspired that music.
That is very inspiring.
Yeah.
You've mentioned in the past, you've done this for a while, since childhood.
Yeah.
You are currently, if I remember correctly, a two-time Suzy Bass winner.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you about your formative years,
Okay.
right? So what was like your moment, like, coming in, stemming from childhood, like the arts, performance, this is what I want to do.
Well, what's funny is I literally just came from, I'm from Richmond, Virginia originally, and I just came from there. We put the show up in Tucson,
Mhm.
and then I had a week or two off, so I went to go visit my family.
Mhm.
And it's always great to see your family because they remind you of kind of how you started, right? To come from a kind of really great opening of the show in Tucson to then be back with my family in Richmond, and for them to be able to remind me, oh yeah, it's right there in that dining room where you taught yourself how to tap dance. Oh yeah, I remember when you were in the fifth grade talent show
Mhm.
and you memorized that dance from that video on MTV and taught it to all of your friends. I remember, it's my sisters and my mom, my mom telling me those stories and just reminding me of. It was a very simple start, right? Very simple public school, 4-H,
Mhm.
chorus. I mean, what an extraordinary gift the arts in public school actually is. I had extraordinary arts educators in chorus and theater. I had a teacher in high school
Mhm.
who saw that as I was learning choreography, that I was picking it up very quickly, and asked me if I wanted to choreograph the show the next season. I was a sophomore in high school. It had never dawned on me that I would be in high school leading my peers, right? And be paid for what, like I'm being paid to be a professional right now. So I think about kind of starting my professional career at 15. And so it's kind of been written in that way. But I did have a performance career as well. I was a concert dancer in Philadelphia, and also worked on Broadway and Broadway choruses. So I did the 8 shows a week as well. So that's really where I started. But I always knew that my career would have seasons. I always knew that I was never the one who really craved the spotlight. I was always the one kind of going, the spotlight should be purple, right? I was always the one who had some response to how the theater thing was made. So I knew that there would be seasons in my career, and part of those seasons for me now is as an educator at Tisch School of the Arts, which I really celebrate, and it really redounds on my artistic practice as well. When I'm in the room with actors, I'm reminded that all of it is about how you communicate and how articulate you can be in terms of inviting someone into an idea. And it's all about that moment when the light goes on in someone's eyes, right? And they go, oh, I get what you're talking about. Oh, it's those two things together. Those things really excite me. And so that's really how I started, right? And I'm kind of just doing what I've been doing since I was 12, right? Making musicals and really having a great time doing it.
I mean, becoming that choreographer, would you classify that as at 15? Would you classify that as your big break, or was there something else that comes to mind?
I don't know that I believe in big break.
Okay.
You know, most times when it seems like there's a big break, there's a lot of little breaks that happen before it, right? Or a lot of little moments that kind of happen before that. You know, it's all kind of a journey, right? But yeah, I guess so. I mean, I would say that it was seminal for me, right? Having someone, a teacher who I had a great deal of respect for, right? Say to me, I think that you have a particular talent and I want to give you the opportunity to refine it. Wow, what a gift, right? And so I take that very seriously with my own students, right? Making sure that I identify talent, that I speak directly to talent, because you never know if some people who are extraordinarily talented have never heard anyone say that to them,
Right.
right? And so it's really important.
I mean, do you have any, you mentioned the teacher.
Yeah.
Do you have any specific mentors or specific key individuals that have done wonders for your development, done wonders for your career? You want
Oh,
to
for
shout them
sure.
out?
Yeah. Oh, the top of the list is Kent Gash, who is the head of my department at Tisch School of the Arts, but also a director that I worked with at the beginning of my professional choreographic career. And just someone else who kind of saw me. I was doing shows with him. I was an actor in shows at some point in my life. But he also saw within that talent the possibility of someone who could make theatrical dance. And so he invited me to jump on a couple shows with him, and I got a chance to really refine my process as a choreographer, as an artist. And it was really important. And then he became the head of the program at Tisch School of the Arts for the musical theater program, new studio on Broadway. And he said, once again, come on over and play in my playground and see what I know that you are, an articulate educator, and you are someone who's very passionate about the musical theater. Come and see if that can translate to what it would mean to be in academia. And that was 2009. That was 2009, right? And so, you know, I'm somebody who believes in mentorship, who thinks the highest form of artistic love is sharing the art with people, and especially those people who you see yourself in, right? Kent Gash, an extraordinary Black director. I hadn't seen many, right, especially in the commercial theater. So to have this example of what it meant for and you know, someone who directs Shakespeare, musicals, new American plays. I mean, just off the meter technique and process, and that was at that time the example that I really needed. And so big shout out to Kent Boy Gash, extraordinary, extraordinary, extraordinary artist.
You mentioned the journey. It's about the journey. If you had to do said journey all over again, would you do anything differently, or would you do it all over again the same way?
No, that's an interesting question. Um, You know, I and this is a gift at the moment, because it doesn't always feel like this. I feel like I'm at the beginning of it again.
Mm,
You know, like I said, my career's had seasons, right? I remember what it meant to be on stage as an actor, as a dancer, right? To go to an audition and hope they like me.
mhm,
Remember that. I remember getting into academia and going, "Wow, am I really smart enough to exist in these halls? I know that I have something to offer the students, but how will I grow into being this person?" Right?
mm,
Um, and then being a professional choreographer, right? You know, you're standing in the same spaces, occupying the same type of space as someone like a Jerome Robbins,
mm,
Michael Bennett, Bob Fosse, Billy Wilson, Camille Brown. I mean, you know, the lists go on and on. And so to think of yourself as being a part of that class of artists,
mm,
it's a lot, right? And so I feel that I grew into those positions, and here's this director position, right? Which feels like a kind of ultimate, kind of bringing together of all the different impulses. And so, you know, if I had it to do all over again, I don't know that I could change anything because it all brought me to
mm,
this moment where I really feel excited to share the kind of wholeness of my artistic practice, right? As a choreographer, as a director who has certain artistic impulses and certain artistic aesthetics
mhm,
that are really important to him, as someone who is looking to make theater in very specific ways
mhm,
and invite actors into healthy spaces.
mhm,
I will say that as a young dancer and a young actor,
mhm,
I don't know that I was always in spaces where I felt like the person or the people who ran it
mm,
were always hoping to put me in my safest, most protected place.
mhm,
But I know as an educator that the only way that you can get the best performance and the best work from actors is if they feel that the person who is leading the room
mhm.
really has their back in terms of their safety,
Right.
in terms of their mental health, and their physical health. And so that's something that's really important to me. But all that stuff I would not have evolved to this place if I hadn't had this exact journey. So I don't know that I can say that I would change anything, you know?
I mean, that's no, that's really touching. I love that.
Yeah.
That sentiment. In regards to obviously with the production, right? We are championing the Harlem Renaissance,
Hmm.
right? Do you have any advice for the youth, specifically the youth, young people of color
Hmm.
pursuing, a career in the arts?
Oh my gosh.
What would you tell
Oh my gosh. So many things.
them?
First off, we need you.
Hmm.
Your your culture needs you.
Hmm.
And they need your voices.
Hmm.
We need their unfettered voice. We need their truth. We need their stories.
Hmm.
I am very excited and inspired now, especially as someone who does new musicals and does new American plays, but also who has a great love for the revival, who has a great love for the American musical of the golden age, right? That's what I grew up on, right? MGM and those things. But as someone who loves those things don't always love me back because many of those musicals that are really steeped in American iconography from certain times don't actually include certain cultural backgrounds in them, right? And so, what does it actually mean to love something so much and not see yourself reflected in it? Um, I can approach that now as an academic and from a place of intellect, but as a young person, what effect does that have on you, right? And so that's why I say with young people now making art, we really need you just to make it. Make it, show up, right? Even if you don't go and get the fancy degree, which, you know, as a college professor, you know, I could feel the lightning bolt about to hit me. But the artist in me speaks louder, right? And knows that there is no institution that gives you permission to make art, right? Making art is your inheritance, right? As a human being, I believe. And so that would be my biggest encouragement to young artists is make your art, right? Don't ask for
Mhm.
permission. Start making things. And then it's in the making that you discover what type of artist you want to be.
Beautiful. Thank you.
When you do a piece about someone who's as genius as Fats Waller, the staging, the design ideas have to be as genius as that person. And so, I said, what would the stage want to look like when I first started talking to our extraordinary scenic designer, Ed Haynes Jr. Shout out to Ed Haynes Jr. What you see on stage is really these kind of extraordinary statues, these kind of scantily clad women, right, wearing with these burlesque ideas and kind of feathers around them. This great deal of verticality on the stage, right? A great deal of the kind of circus nature in that, and a couple of surprises. The set does a couple of things that I think are surprising in the way that a circus would be. And the reason that I even invoke the word circus is because I think of Fats Waller in the same way that a lot of people think of Salvador Dali, right? Like as someone who is almost surreal, right? He was doing something during the Harlem Renaissance that had never been seen before, right? He was one of the first Afrofuturists, right? And so I just really wanted to make sure that we landed on a design for the show that was really as extraordinary and had as much scope as Fats.
You know, this was going to segue into my next question, but I think you answered. But if you're going to add more to it, like what responsibility does a director have when presenting historically rooted art, particularly with the Harlem Renaissance?
Yeah. I mean, I think responsibility, that word I pull back from, but I do
Okay.
think that there is if you are to inhabit it fully, if you are to do justice in terms of finding the most vivid, dynamic exploration of an artist when you are celebrating them on stage, you want to know both the academic part of it, the dramaturgy of it, what is the story, right? So we know that Fats Waller lived in Harlem. We know that he was a contemporary of the Gershwins, of Duke Ellington, of these extraordinary artists of the time. We know all of these things. We know that he traveled America in a time where traveling America as Black artists was really, and sometimes very dangerous. And so there's so much of his backstory that we actually know, right? So we start there, and then you have to combine that with your articulate kind of impulses around it. All right, well, those are the facts. Now, where's the art? Where is the impulse that now expands their work and brings it into conversation with the era you're currently living in? And so, do I think people have a responsibility to do that? Well, some people may want to do Ain't Misbehavin', or if another director wants to do it, may want to do it as a piece about a museum piece, right? A kind of cabaret of just the songs. For me, that wasn't kind of how I experienced Waller. I experienced Waller as a product of 20s, 30s, and 40s America, but also relevant right now, right, in a post Wakanda world. And right, I think that he made space for that for us in the way that he existed as a performer and as a composer. This is someone who composed hundreds of songs and just kind of was able to do them with a kind of alacrity and a kind of flexibility that we haven't seen. I really believe if there wasn't a Fats Waller, there would be no, Missy Elliott or John Batista or Jelly Roll, or right. We wouldn't be even looking at popular music in the same exact way. And so when I say that that person means that much, right, I do think that there is, when you're thinking about evoking them on stage, it is my impulse to think past the dramaturgy, to think past the facts, to include them, but stand on them and try and make something that's reaching into the present moment.
Amazing. Obviously, I'm really looking forward to this production, right?
Awesome.
But
Me too.
I mean, of course, right? What has been the greatest creative challenge you've experienced with this project?
Creative challenge. I think we had a lot of ideas, right? And shout out to all the designers. Jais LaBeouf, Rui Rita, who's right behind me, our lighting designer, Dan Perlstein-Jaquette, our sound designer, and Ed Haynes Jr., again, our scenic designer, who, most people, when they hear that somewhere is doing Ain't Misbehavin', they go, okay, it's going to be this and this and this and this. But when I said that sensual circus thing to Ed, and he said, say less, that was a real kind of starting position for us. So when I said to Jais, we're going to look at these numbers in the show from a burlesque inspired space, right? And that's what you'll see on stage, right? There's a owned sensuality in the show that I think was really important because oftentimes more Rubenesque or Zoftig artists in many cultures can be thought of as only punchlines, right? And not as the sensual and um, uh, 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 sexy heart of,
Yeah.
of something, right? But then I think of, Black culture, right? And I think of Biggie Smalls, and I think of Heavy D, and I think of, right? And I think of having learned, for me, having learned one of the ways that I did learn how to dance was at my aunt's side, right? At the family reunion or something, right? Who was a big woman, right? She taught me how to do the electric slide.
Right.
And so celebrating more Rubenesque bodies, more fuller bodies in a very particular way. That was one of the provocations to Jais, and Jais said, "Yeah, let's do that. That sounds like 2026 to me." And so each stage, each designer, when I was able to speak with them, they said yes. They said, "Yeah, okay, these are the resources, which may kind of moderate the idea a bit, but I'm going to reach for your idea." And that's what really, I think, has made the show into something I think really worth seeing, is everyone's willingness to say yes, and so, yeah.
Now, this next question,
Okay.
it's a one question, but
Okay.
it's a two-parter,
Right.
multifaceted. How is the Harlem Renaissance, the art, the history of it, immortalized in the modern day and beyond? And you just finished a show in Tucson. I remember this. Why is it important for this show to be shown to Arizona audiences today?
Mm. Um, well, today, literally, because it's the middle of Black History Month, which I actually think, it's something keep reminding myself that, there's something kismet about the fact that we are celebrating Fats Waller at this time. Um, the Harlem Renaissance, for me, my father, growing up, he was a doctor of African American history. He is a doctor of African American history. And so Harlem always lived for me as a really magical place in my home growing up. It was the place that Langston Hughes played, Zora Neale Hurston, Duke Ellington. It was a place that I always knew that I wanted to go because I wanted to also understand with the extraordinary contributions that those artists have made to the American culture. I wanted to understand what they were inspired by. I wanted to know what that special place was that was delivering these extraordinary artists to the American culture. And so I moved to Harlem in 2000, right out of college. And it's been a place that I've lived for. Right now, I'm living in the West Village, but I lived in Harlem for 20 years. I'm really chasing that idea. And what I can say about Harlem is it's a special hamlet in Manhattan. It has a very particular history. Artists who go there, and this is artists beyond color. This is artists of any cultural background who go there and who are open to what ghosts may be speaking to them. Um, are undoubtedly inspired, are undoubtedly influenced by the energy of that place. And when I think about things like fashion, even outside of being an artist, right? When I was living in Harlem, walking down the street, right, and you see, and you're not talking about Saks Fifth Avenue, you're not talking about expensive fashion ideas. You're talking about raw creativity. You're talking about a bunch of people who live in a place where creativity kind of seeps from the pores of the place. Um, uh, I still think about it and I get emotional. I still think about it and I'm thankful for what Harlem is, what Harlem has delivered to America, and that I get to be as an artist who gets to go to places like here I am in Tempe, Arizona. In Tempe, Arizona. Um, I get to go places and celebrate the Harlem that I know. And for those people who know and those people who don't, I know that I've done something that is extraordinarily important as an American, and as someone who knows that Black culture is American culture.
Thank you so much. I had the pleasure interviewing you.
Thank you.
Would you like to
Appreciate it.
tell the audience the showtimes of Ain't Misbehavin?
Oh, I don't know the show times, but I do know the dates.
The dates. The dates.
We open here February 21st, our first show, and then we close here on March 8th. So come down to the Tempe, what's this place called?
The Tempe Center for the Arts.
Center for the
The
Arts.
TCA.
The TCA, and check out Ain't Misbehavin. You will have a fantastic time.
And then can we have a shout out to Phoenix Soul and Tremaine over there?
And Phoenix Soul, thank you for having me. I really, really very much appreciate it. And thank you for supporting Ain't Misbehavin.
Dell, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. New York in the house. You already know how it is.